What would it mean for spacetime to think? Not as a hidden mind behind the stars, something more modest. Matter forms a model of the world. Then, in living systems, part of that model can include the system itself. Somewhere inside the universe, physical processes became able to feel, remember, choose, and ask questions. A small region of matter became capable of wondering what matter is. Does that make consciousness an exception to physics? Or does consciousness mark a boundary where physical mechanisms and lived experience meet in a way we still do not understand? This film will not claim that physics has solved consciousness. It will not claim that PTQ geometry has proven a soul. And it will not treat epsilon as a consciousness field. The evidence does not support those statements. This is a disciplined thought experiment. We will examine inward feedback, constrained choice, and creative self-organization. Then we will ask whether geometry and dynamical systems offer useful echoes of those structures. Not an identity, not a proof, a language for asking a better question. Imagine a landscape with several possible paths. Biology sets some slopes. Experience carves valleys. Culture builds roads. Trauma can make certain routes steep or temporarily unreachable. We do not choose the starting terrain, and we cannot erase every obstacle by thinking differently. But several directions may still remain accessible. Choice is not the power to remove the landscape. It is the capacity to direct movement within it. Constraints do not eliminate agency. They define the space in which agency operates. Projection offers a useful metaphor, but only with care. A projection does not create its source from nothing. Conditions, boundaries, scale, and perspective determine which features become visible. Choice can be understood in a similarly modest way. It does not select a magical new universe. It gives weight to one reachable action rather than another. That action becomes part of the world's next state. A painful event cannot be undone by a slogan. The nervous system may remain guarded. Available paths may narrow. Still, interpretation and action can influence what follows. Pain may lead toward isolation, caution, art, understanding, or a boundary that protects future life. These paths are not equally easy, but different directions can produce different futures. Repeated directions become patterns. Patterns become habits. Habits reshape the landscape from which the next decision is made. Choice may be one way a constrained system participates in forming its own future constraints. Begin with a familiar mystery. You do not merely see an object, you can also know that you are seeing it. You do not merely feel pain, you can notice, I am in pain. This is a form of self-reference. The system represents the outside world. It also represents something about its own internal state. It includes itself inside the model. Imagine a camera pointed at a screen that shows the camera's own image. The image folds inward, but consciousness is not simply an infinite hall of mirrors. A useful loop must affect what happens next. That is where feedback begins. A system acts. The action changes its conditions. The changed conditions become new input. A microphone placed too close to a loudspeaker creates a powerful feedback loop. Sound returns, grows, and changes what happens next. But the loudspeaker does not know that it is loud. Feedback alone is not consciousness. Three ideas must be kept separate. Feedback changes the next state. Memory carries part of the past forward. A self-model makes the system itself part of what is being tracked. These structures can work together, but they are not the same thing. and even together, they do not prove subjective experience. Architecture is not experience. A model of pain is not pain. The third mystery is creativity. A creative mind does not merely repeat stored information. It reorganizes memory, sensation, and structure into something new. Pure order produces repetition. Pure disorder produces noise. Creativity seems to require structure strong enough to hold a pattern, and flexibility great enough to allow a new path. Dynamical systems offer a visual language for this balance. An attractor is a state, region, or pattern toward which a system's behavior tends to evolve. A point attractor settles into one stable state. A periodic attractor repeats a cycle. A strange attractor never repeats exactly, yet remains confined within a structured region. Its motion can be unpredictable without being arbitrary. The word strange does not mean supernatural. It describes deterministic dynamics that can be extremely sensitive to initial conditions. Order and unpredictability coexist. That makes the strange attractor a useful metaphor for creativity. Jazz improvisation follows rhythm, harmony, technique, and the responses of other musicians. Yet within those constraints, a player can produce a phrase that has never been played before. A creative mind may work in a similar way. It moves through structure without being trapped in exact repetition. Novelty becomes possible because the system is constrained, but not frozen. Still, the metaphor has limits. A strange attractor is not an explanation of imagination. An attractor describes patterns of behavior. It does not explain why those patterns are experienced from the inside. Learning, memory, and attention can reshape an effective landscape. Old patterns may become easier or harder to enter. New pathways may become stable enough to revisit. Creativity may involve changing the landscape, not escaping it. Within the PTQ perspective used in this series, epsilon is a proposed projection residual. It is a mismatch left when a deeper geometric description appears in an observable one. Usually, we imagine such a residual as something to measure or constrain. Now consider a speculative extension. Picture someone walking across wet ground. The terrain constrains the next footstep, but each footprint also changes the mud. The walker changes the terrain. The altered terrain changes the next step. In the analogy, geometry shapes the residual. The residual modifies the effective geometry. The updated geometry constrains later evolution. This is a model of bidirectional feedback. It is not evidence that epsilon behaves this way in nature, and it is not a mechanism of consciousness. Its value is narrower. It gives us a geometric picture of path dependence and inward return. Living systems also carry their past into the future. Learning changes perception. Attention changes what enters memory. Action changes the environment from which the next action begins. That brings us to the second mystery: choice. From the outside, a decision may look like the result of genes, memory, environment, and neural activity. From the inside, decisions carry uncertainty and weight. If every event is fully determined, choice can seem like an illusion. If an action has no cause, it becomes random. But meaningful choice does not need to be absolute freedom or pure chance. We can now return to the central question. None of this makes the brain optional. Conscious experience depends deeply on biological organization, sensory systems, memory, the body, and the surrounding world. Change the brain, sleep, chemistry, pain, or attention, and the experienced world can change. Any larger interpretation must pass through biology. The question is why conscious life repeatedly involves feedback, memory, self-modeling, constrained trajectories, and self-organization. Perhaps these structures are among the conditions under which conscious life becomes possible. But they are not by themselves an explanation of experience. A map of regulation is not a feeling. A model of color is not the redness of red. A model of grief is not the weight of grief. Geometry may help describe organization. It does not yet tell us why there is something it is like to be the organized system. In that sense, consciousness may stand at a boundary between mechanism and meaning, between objective process and subjective experience, between a system that merely changes and a system for which those changes matter. PTQ does not yet provide a theory of this boundary. At most, it suggests a question. Could a deeper geometric description someday help represent feedback among physical structure, information, and the conditions associated with experience? For now, that remains speculation. No equation presented here derives consciousness. No residual field has been shown to possess subjective experience. The boundary must remain visible. We do not need to imagine that the entire universe is conscious. A more modest fact is already extraordinary. The universe has produced local structures capable of building models of the universe. Stars formed heavy elements. Those elements formed planets. On at least one planet, chemistry became life. And some living systems became able to look at the stars and ask how any of this became possible. The brain is not a receiver tuned to an external cosmic mind. It is an active integrator. It weaves sensation, memory, body, prediction, emotion, and environment into the fragile continuity we call the self. That self is temporary. It can lose memories, change beliefs, and misunderstand its own motives. Yet it can still reach beyond the present moment and ask questions about infinity. Perhaps consciousness is not space-time geometry itself, but it may be one of the deepest outcomes that geometry, matter, and life have produced together. A place where the universe does not simply exist, but becomes locally representable to itself. We have crossed from the unnamed source to duality, to resonance, and now to consciousness. One final question remains. If this bridge is worth crossing, where should it lead us? In the final chapter, we will return from cosmic speculation to human decisions. How should a new scientific worldview change the way we build technology, organize knowledge, and understand our place in the world? The bridge does not promise a final answer. Its value may be more demanding than that. It may teach us how to ask better questions without confusing wonder with proof.